In my many years as a history nerd, I've seen some very good and very bad recreations of US World War II uniforms. Trying to replicate these iconic looks from the past can be very difficult, not only because you need to track down all the correct items that a soldier would have had at the time, but also because you need to understand how soldiers wore their uniforms and equipment during the war. Nailing the small details in a historical uniform can make reenactors, movie characters, or video game models look just like real soldiers who marched straight out of the 1940s. But if you overlook the small things, you'll probably end up with something that looks more like a World War II costume than an actual soldier. Today, I'm going to cover 5 of the most common mistakes that I see people make when recreating US World War II uniforms, but I have to warn you, once you see them, you won't be able to unsee them. After this video, I can guarantee you'll start spotting these mistakes in World War II movies, video games, reenactments, and anywhere else these iconic World War II uniforms are being recreated. Let's get right into it with the first common World War II kit mistake. Number 1, wearing the haversack incorrectly. The M1928 haversack is a very recognizable piece of World War II gear. It was the most common pack used by US soldiers throughout World War II. The haversack is notoriously complicated. It's basically a big flat piece of canvas that you fold around your gear and use a series of straps to cinch everything down. But not only do people often have trouble packing the haversack, I often see people wearing it incorrectly as well. When you wear your haversack incorrectly, it can be uncomfortable and lead to all your gear getting pulled up high on your belly, kind of like this guy in the movie The 6888. But thankfully, it's a pretty easy fix. Let me do a quick demonstration here of the improper and the proper way to wear the haversack. But first, all this World War II stuff ain't cheap, so I'd like to thank Venture Surplus for sponsoring this video and supporting my work on this page. Venture Surplus offers USGI surplus gear that's proven to work in the field. They're known for having some of the best grading standards in the industry and for their knowledgeable and experienced team who actually tests and uses the products that they sell. They've got affordable surplus gear that you can rely on when you need it. They're also known for their huge selection of USGI MREs and freeze-dried meals that have 5 to 30 year shelf lives. Now, MREs, some people love them, some people hate them. They're better than World War II rations, I can tell you that. But no matter which MRE camp you fall into, we all know they're the best option for survival, prepping, hunting, camping, backpacking, LARPing, zombie apocalypse, you're hungry and you don't want to go to the grocery store, and all kinds of other life or death situations. I think everyone should have a few weeks worth of emergency meals set aside, especially with how crazy the world is right now, so now's your time to take care of that. I even got you guys a discount code, so click the link in the description to shop at Venture Surplus, then use code WWWOFF for 10% off your already affordable MRE purchase. Alright, now let's get to that haversack demonstration. Alright, so I just put my haversack on here. You can see I have it packed up. I tried to put a couple heavy things in there to help kind of demonstrate the problem that I have going on here. So it might not look too bad right now, but as you can see, if I'm walking around and moving and the pack kind of starts to settle, you can see my cartridge belt is getting pulled all the way up to my chest, which is not good. It's going to be uncomfortable, and it's just not how this is supposed to be worn. So what is the problem here? Well, if I turn to the side here, you can see that all of the weight of the haversack is on these straps, and in the front here, I have both straps clipped to the front of my cartridge belt. So, of course, as I move around, the weight of the haversack is just going to pull that up higher and higher as my haversack drops all the way down to my butt. The solution to this problem is very simple. All I need to do is wear the pack properly by clipping these outside straps to the D-rings on the bottom of the haversack. So all I need to do is remove this outside strap, find the D-ring at the bottom of my haversack, and then clip the strap right onto that D-ring. Okay, I still have to do the other side, but already you can see the haversack is supporting its own weight here, kind of like a backpack, now that that first strap is attached to the pack itself. Even though it might look like both of these straps are meant to go right down to the cartridge belt, that's just never gonna work out. Let me fix the other side and show you how it looks. All right, this is much better. So now the pack is high on my back, it's much more comfortable, it's definitely not going anywhere even if I jump around, and my cartridge belt is sitting right at my waist where it should be. A good test to see if you've done this correctly is you should be able to unbuckle your cartridge belt and have it hang exactly where it was when it was buckled. If you unbuckle it and your straps get pulled up to your nips, then you've done something wrong. If you end up trying this on your own, you might have to play with the straps a little bit to get it comfortable, but once you have it set up, like I said, you should be able to have your cartridge belt hang right here, and the haversack should be quite comfortable to wear on your back. Keep an eye out next time you watch a World War II movie to see just how many of the extras are wearing their haversack completely wrong. This next mistake is a little less cut and dry than that one, but it's so prevalent that I just have to cover it today. Number 2. Wearing the wrong helmet accessories. This is a big one that covers a lot of items, so I'll break this down into the 3 main culprits: helmet nets, helmet bands, and first aid packets. All 3 of those things are things that could be correct to wear on your helmet for a World War II impression, but it's a bit complicated and I see people mess it up all the time. Let's start by talking about helmet nets like the one I have on here. There was a huge variety of different helmet nets used by US troops during World War II, and the different types of nets look completely different. Now, the purpose of all these helmet nets was the same. It was to camouflage your steel helmet by breaking up the outline of the helmet, reducing glare off of the surface of the helmet, and also giving you a spot to stick additional camouflage like scrim or leaves and foliage. Now, even though all these nets served the same purpose, different troops got different helmet nets at different times in the war. So if you want to accurately portray a specific point in time, you can't just grab whatever helmet net you think looks the coolest. Now, there really was a wide variety of nets used during the war, so I can't cover all of them in this video, but I'll give you a quick World War II helmet net boot camp that should cover some of the most common examples so you can keep an eye out for it. First up is this light colored net in khaki or OD3 that has 1/2 or 3/4 inch holes. This is a super common one that you see in movies and reenactments, but these were not very common during World War II. They did exist, I've seen photos of them in use, but the vast majority of troops did not have access to this type of net. So my recommendation is, if you're putting together a World War II uniform, do not use this type of net. There are exceptions. If you're representing a unit that made extensive use of these and you have photos to prove that, that's great, go for it, but for the majority of reenactors and movie characters and whatever else, this is just not appropriate. Next up is the same type of helmet net, but in a darker color, like the brown net that I have here or the olive drab number 7 net on my helmet. These were the nets that were most commonly used by US troops on D-Day. Not all US troops wore these nets, and they saw plenty of use after that as well, but they kind of decreased in popularity as the war went on. Next up is the 1/4 inch or British style small hole net. This type of net is pretty much the same as the one on my helmet, just with slightly smaller holes, and these were very common among certain units. Some groups got these nets prior to D-Day, and this is also the net that you typically see US paratroopers wearing for Operation Market Garden. Like I mentioned, these are often called British style nets because they were produced and used by the British, but I believe the British produced the last style of net we covered as well, so I don't know why this one in particular is called the British style. Maybe the Brits just made more use of this style of net. Next up is the shrimp net. These were small helmet nets made from cutting up large sheets of camouflage netting. Those large camouflage nets were meant to be used to camouflage vehicles and artillery from enemy observation, but the army quickly realized that a huge net with tiny holes in it draped over a vehicle doesn't really blend in with the surroundings. It basically made it look like a solid sheet of canvas and it stood out like a sore thumb. So they adopted new types of vehicle nets, and those old ones got cut up and repurposed as helmet nets. These nets didn't show up until a bit later in the war, so it wouldn't be correct to wear this for D-Day, for example. There were many different variations of shrimp nets made during the war, but they all kind of have that look of a thick woven pattern as opposed to some of the other nets that look like pieces of knotted rope. The final net we'll cover is the helmet net with band, also known as the M44 net. This was actually the first camouflage helmet net that the US mass produced for that purpose. Remember, all the other nets we covered so far were either made by the British or cut up from vehicle nets. As the name suggests, this helmet net had a band attached to it that could be fitted around the helmet and used to hold additional camouflage materials like sticks and leaves. This helmet net didn't really appear on the front lines in large numbers until the fall of 1944. People often mistake that type of helmet net for the shrimp net that we just covered, but they're two distinct designs. The helmet net with band is very underrepresented in reenactments and movies and such, mostly because they're pretty rare and expensive today. Choosing the wrong helmet net might seem like a small thing, but it can really ruin an otherwise accurate uniform. There are many more types of helmet nets that I didn't even cover today, so if you're trying to replicate a World War II uniform, whether it's for a reenactment or a movie or a video game or whatever, make sure to look at some photos of the troops that you're trying to represent to figure out which, if any, helmet net is correct to use. Alright, that brings us to our next helmet accessory that people get wrong: helmet band. bands. Like I mentioned, helmet bands were meant to hold leaves, grass, and foliage on your helmet for camouflage purposes. There were three main types of helmet bands that were around during World War II. First was the band attached to the M44 net that we already covered. Next was black rubber helmet bands that were cut from tire inner tubes. So those weren't issued, they were made in the field, and if the group that you're representing made use of those, that could be a great addition to your uniform. The third one is the one that causes most of the problems. This was an OD green neoprene helmet band, kind of like the one attached to the M44 net, but it was a standalone band, not attached to a net. Now, these bands did exist during World War II, but from everything I can find, they were rarely ever used, at least in the European theater. Unless you're putting together a uniform to represent a very specific group that you're sure got this type of helmet band, do not use them. I think a lot of the confusion around this comes from that M44 net we talked about. People see photos of troops with helmet nets with bands around them and assume they were issued the band on its own, not realizing the band was attached to that specific helmet net. I see this all the time at World War II reenactments, people wearing those elastic helmet bands either on their own or over a different style of helmet net that isn't the M44 net. And basically, if you're trying to represent a World War II soldier and you're wearing one of those green helmet bands that isn't attached to your helmet net, you're probably doing it wrong. Again, there are always exceptions to that, but I'd say that's the general rule. The final helmet accessory that people often mess up is the parachute first aid packet. This was a first aid kit used by paratroopers and certain other troops during World War II, and there were instances during the war where troops were instructed to wear this first aid kit attached to their helmet. Not only did wearing this kit on your helmet make it easily accessible, it gave the paratroopers a unique silhouette so they could be easily identified at a distance by friendly forces. The thing is, that was really only done by the 17th Airborne Division during Operation Varsity, elements of the 101st Airborne Division like the 502nd PIR during Operation Market Garden, and maybe a few other smaller examples. Outside of those few specific groups, this was not a common practice, and you generally do not see paratroopers doing that for the D-Day jumps, for example. Paratroopers on D-Day were issued these kits, but they typically wore them on their suspenders, their belts, their ankles, really anywhere but their helmet. In fact, I've seen more pictures of infantry troops on D-Day wearing these on their helmets than I have of paratroopers doing that on D-Day. Yet, it seems like in every movie, video game, and reenactment, all the paratroopers on D-Day are wearing these things on their helmet. Since this is such a big kit tied right to the front of your helmet, it really sticks out when people get this wrong. Next time you see a depiction of paratroopers on D-Day, take a look at their helmets and see if they have these attached. If they do, then they probably made a mistake. Alright, let's move on to the next common mistake on this list. Number 3, wearing incorrect undershirts. This one is bad. It might sound small, but it can be surprisingly noticeable. During the war, there was a variety of undershirts that were worn by US troops. There were white and OD A-frame undershirts, wool undershirts with long sleeves for the winter, and even white t-shirts were used at times. A lot of people overlook this because at the end of the day, your undershirt is under your uniform, so it doesn't really matter, right? Well, most World War II uniforms were meant to be worn with the top button open, so if you're wearing the wrong undershirt, it'll be instantly noticeable. Well, the most common mistake I see is people wearing modern t-shirts under their uniform, whether they're white or olive drab or some other color. In original World War II photos, you can sometimes spot a soldier here or there wearing a white t-shirt under their uniform, but it's definitely not like every single soldier in a unit would have had that like we saw during the Army's anniversary parade not too long ago. Again, there are some exceptions to this, but overall, it just was not common. Additionally, the t-shirts that were around during World War II do not look like a modern t-shirt. Those shirts had a very boxy cut. They didn't have these thick ribbed collars that most t-shirts have today, and the fabric on them was generally very thin. A few years ago, I documented my journey of going to different stores and trying to find a modern t-shirt that resembled the t-shirts used during World War II. I ended up finding an unlikely winner in a women's maternity shirt that I found at Target, and they're actually pretty spot on. I've made use of those t-shirts when replicating US Navy, US Marine Corps, even US Army physical training uniforms, but when I'm doing a US Army combat uniforms, I typically ditch the white t-shirt and stick to a wool undershirt or an A-frame undershirt, just because, like I said, the t-shirts were not that common. Sometimes to try to get around this, I'll see people wear OD colored t-shirts because they think that that'll stand out less than a white t-shirt, but at least white t-shirts were around back then and used sometimes. A soldier would not have had access to an OD t-shirt. The closest thing would maybe be the Kelly green shirts that were worn by Marines during the war, but the Army would not have used those shirts. This one in particular is one that you won't be able to unsee. If the white t-shirts under World War II uniforms didn't stand out to you in movies and such before, they will now. Okay, this next one is a super common mistake, but thankfully it's easy to fix. Number 4, wearing leggings incorrectly. These are M1938 leggings, also known as gaiters or spats. They're just canvas cuffs that wrap around the outside of your boot to keep rocks and other debris from getting inside there while you're on the move. These really aren't that hard to put on once you know how to do it, but oftentimes I see people get confused about how these are supposed to be worn and they end up wearing them wrong. So let me do a quick demonstration here to show how these leggings are meant to be worn. Alright, let's go ahead and put these leggings on. I already have my Type 3 service shoes on here, and I'll be putting these leggings on. Now, the most important part of putting on the leggings is just that you put them on the right feet facing the right direction. You always want the hooks and laces here to be on the outside, not facing inwards towards your other foot. The reason for this is if the hooks and laces are both on the inside, then when you walk and your legs brush past each other, you risk tripping because the hooks will get caught on the other legging. It's also important to make sure that the openings of these little hooks are facing towards the back of your foot. If you put these on the wrong side, the hooks will be facing forward and they'll get snagged on things as you're walking. So that's why you want the openings to be facing backwards. Once you have these oriented correctly, putting them on is fairly simple. So let's go ahead and lace them up. I'll mention that I'm actually cheating a bit with my leggings. The bottom of this lace here should really be going through this eyelet right here if I were doing this by the book. The problem is when you have them laced like that, you have to get a bunch of slack at the bottom of the legging to pull your boot through it. Then you have to pull that slack through as you lace them up. It's just a little annoying in my opinion. So what I do is just skip that eyelet and start here. That way I can just wrap the legging around the outside of my boot that quickly and it's much faster. There are a few different styles of leggings with different numbers of eyelets over here, so that will determine how to lace them. But on this style, you want to start with the lace coming out of the bottom eyelet and then going in to the front of the next eyelet and then alternate that pattern all the way to the top. And you should have your lace coming out of the top eyelet like I do here. So from here, all we need to do is make sure our pants are tucked in, our legging is pulled back tight, and our strap is tightened so they're pulled down on our boot. Then we'll just grab this first loop on the outside of the front of the legging and pull it around the bottom hook. Repeat that for the next hook, and then the rest of the process is very simple from there. You just need to connect the hooks and loops and you're in business. Alright, now we have it laced all the way up, and I will point out, even though I skipped that one eyelet at the bottom, it ended up making no difference. They're still laced properly and very secure. Again, that's not the by the book way, but I kind of cut that corner because it's just not worth it to me. Now that I've laced my leggings up and tightened them, all I have to do is tie them off so they won't loosen and then tuck this additional lace inside. There's really no one correct way to tie off your leggings. A lot of people recommend going through this outer eyelet, then bringing the lace back through both of these eyelets, both on the inner part of the legging here and on the outer portion, to tighten them up. And then you can just make a little knot here to secure the legging. Go like that. And you can tuck in the remainder of the lace. Personally, what I often do is after coming through this outer outlet, I'll simply tie a slip knot to act as a stopper. You just have to make sure that the running end of the knot, that's the end that I could pull in order to take the knot out of the lace. That has to be the excess lace because obviously we're trying to hold it tight. We don't want to be able to pull this and bring the knot out. That will act as a nice stopper, and from there you can simply tuck the lace into the legging. They're really not all that complicated. Once you have the laces inserted properly, and once you have it oriented correctly on your leg, the rest is very simple. Leggings are such an iconic looking part of the US World War II uniform, and even though they're kind of annoying to lace up, once you have them on, they're very practical. I can't move on from this section without sharing this story. A while back, I was at a World War II reenactment, and a big group of reenactors came running past me doing morning PT, and my friend Mark yelled at the group, "Hey, your leggings are on backwards." And immediately all of them running started stumbling and tripping, trying to look at their leggings to see if they had put them on wrong. It was pretty good. Okay, I saved the best for last. This is probably the most common mistake I see out of anything on this list. Number 5. Undubbed boots. Dubbing or dubbin was a type of leather treatment that was applied to boots during World War II that had the rough grain side of the leather exposed. So that would include the Type 3 service shoes, double buckle boots, and a few other models. Dubbing was an oily compound that helped keep the leather supple and pliable while also sealing it up to keep it water resistant. There were a few different types of dubbing used during the war. For example, there was one type specifically meant to keep the leather from molding in tropical climates, but the most common type was meant to protect against poison gas. Like we were talking about, this type of dubbing sealed up the boots, but not only would it keep out water, it would also hopefully keep out any chemical weapons so that they wouldn't penetrate the boots and reach your skin. I mentioned this is one of the most common mistakes I see, but who cares if actors in a movie, for example, are wearing boots that haven't been water and chemical weapon proof? Well, it's because applying dubbing to the boots completely changes their appearance. When you see brand new World War II boots, the leather is typically fairly bright and tan in color. But once the boots are dubbed, they have a very dark color, almost black in some cases, and they have a bit of a smoother texture to them. Even if you get your hands on the best reproduction World War II boots that money can buy, if you don't properly dub them, they'll look totally incorrect. Today, modern waterproofing boot treatments that soak into the leather grain are typically used to achieve the same look and effect as World War II boot dubbing. Snow Seal is a popular choice. I often use Obernov's leather oil and LP to keep my boots looking sharp, although I just wore these all weekend so they could use some more dubbing on them. Not only is this necessary to replicate the look of a World War II soldier, it's also practical. Your boots will last longer and work better for you if they're properly dubbed. This is another one that a lot of people overlook. I guess that goes without saying since it's on this list, but having those bright colored tan boots with an otherwise accurate uniform just ruins the whole look. Alright, that's all 5 World War II uniform mistakes that I'll cover today, but I have so many more of these that I see all the time and I'd love to tell you about. So let me know in the comments if you want to hear me yap about more uniform mistakes. I'd love to make a part 2. If you're a fellow history nerd like myself and you enjoy watching these videos, please consider becoming a YouTube channel member or Patreon member to support my work on this page and get access to exclusive perks like bonus videos, access to my members-only Discord server, and much more. Making history videos like this is my full-time job, and your contributions really help me to be able to keep making videos like this while relying a little bit less on YouTube's ever-changing monetization policies. If that's not your thing, I totally understand. The biggest way you can support my channel is just by watching my videos when I put them out, and I really appreciate you doing that right now. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Go dub up those boots of yours, and I'll see you in the next one.